Welcome to EWTN News Nightly. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell. Tonight's top stories. He's Time Magazine's Person of the Year, but Pope Francis has been ruffling feathers with his criticisms of trickle-down economics and unregulated markets. We'll talk to Ramesh Ponnuru of National Review and John Carr of America magazine for their take on the Pope's economics. The new Vatican Commission to combat child sexual abuse in the church is sparking lots of questions. We'll bring you answers from the Vatican and analysis from a psychiatrist and charter member of the U.S. Bishops' Child Protection Review Board. And 1 year after a shooter stormed Sandy Hook Elementary School and took the lives of 20 first graders and 6 staff members, the pastor of Newtown's Catholic Church opens up about his community's long road to healing. Thanks for joining us. Time Magazine selected Pope Francis as its Person of the Year today, saying that after only 9 months in office, the new Holy Father has captured the imagination of millions and changed public perception of the Church. The People's Pope, as Time dubbed him, beat out NSA leaker Edward Snowden for the distinction, which the news magazine has been giving each year since 1927. Francis is the third pope to be so honored by Time magazine. Previous winners include Blessed Pope John Paul II in 1994 and Blessed Pope John XXIII in 1963. Leaders from the U.S. and around the world are paying tribute to former South African President Nelson Mandela this week. Earlier today, thousands of South Africans lined up to view Mandela's body and sign a condolence book at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. That's the same place where Mandela was sworn in 19 years ago as South Africa's first black president. Mandela's body will lie in state in a glass-covered casket until Friday. His body will then be flown to his rural childhood village of Kunu, where a state funeral will be held on Sunday. On Tuesday, a mix of royalty, statesmen, celebrities, and ordinary South Africans gathered by the tens of thousands at a Johannesburg soccer stadium to honor the anti-apartheid icon who died in his home Thursday at age 95. Officials in Newtown, Connecticut are asking for privacy as residents mark the anniversary of the school shooting that took the lives of 20 children and 6 staff members 1 year ago this Saturday. In a recent interview, the pastor of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church in Newtown opened up about the massacre. He says he still feels overcome with emotion when he thinks about the 8 first graders he had to bury.
They weren't anonymous people or anonymous families. They were part of us. And I think that's why the impact was so deep on me. They still cry. I still cry. Oh. It hasn't shaken my faith. I mean, it has shaken my faith in people. I will say that, because you just wonder, where are we heading? But until people's hearts change and until there's a respect for every human being, there are going to be these kinds of incidents. There are going to be these kinds of tragedies. There's going to continue to be violence.
Newtown officials are not hosting formal events on the anniversary, but St. Rose of Lima Church tells EWTN News Nightly that the parish will mark the occasion with a memorial mass, a tolling of the bells of consolation, and the dedication of a parish memorial to honor the victims. Catholics and others from across the U.S. are wrapping up their last week of a month-long public fast for immigration reform. Members of dozens of civil and religious groups have been taking turns camping out on Washington's National Mall since November 12th, abstaining from food and drinking only water. Their goal? To spur Congress to pass immigration reform that includes a pathway to citizenship for America's 11 million undocumented immigrants.
We have been praying, advocating for, on behalf of our immigrant brothers and sisters, protecting the families that are being kind of ripped apart by a broken immigration system. And in a way, it's also coming out of our commitment to kind of respect for life.
Participants in the Fast for Families, as it is known, will take down their tents tomorrow on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. But members say their private fasting and prayers will continue. The U.S. job market is finally showing signs of strength. The latest numbers indicate unemployment in November fell to a 5-year low of 7%. while economists celebrate the homeless still struggle to find a job, one key step to getting off the streets. EWTN News Nightly Susanna Pinto recently caught up with a group of women just a few blocks from the White House who are trying to get back on their feet.
21 women call Mount Carmel House their home, including Marika Robinette. Not long ago, Marika and her housemates were living on the streets.
No one truly knows what it's like to be homeless until they actually experience it. When you cannot find stable employment, you feel like you, in some way, shape, or form, failed.
The 37-year-old, who used to be a certified nurse's assistant, was homeless for 4.5 years. She lived in a shelter before getting into Mount Carmel, a permanent home run by Catholic Charities. Now Marika has one simple goal.
Trying to find work.
Residents of Mount Carmel get job counseling and are required to turn in 40 contacts per week to prove they're looking hard. Mount Carmel House is just one of hundreds of agencies run by Catholic Charities, which provided some type of housing service to nearly 500,000 people nationwide in 2012.
Things may look bad back at Mount Carmel House for residents who are desperate for work. Interestingly, though, homelessness is on the decline nationally. Here at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, stats show that homelessness has dropped 9% since 2007. But experts say the goal is to end homelessness, and the way to do that is to look at more than just jobs.
The major driver in homelessness overall is housing affordability. It's not really the characteristics of homeless people, although that's what people tend to think of, that they're different somehow and that's why they're homeless. Actually, it's not really the case.
Nevertheless, Mount Carmel staff say issues like mental illness, substance abuse, and domestic violence do play a role in their residents' lives. The program's holistic Catholic approach includes a simple game plan.
They have to stay positive and diligent with whatever their goal is. You have to always continue to try to reach your goal, no matter what it is, no matter what's going on in the day.
Marika is grateful for Mount Carmel House. She still hasn't found a job, but she's hopeful, and her faith is a constant source of strength.
God won't give you anything you can't handle. So if I remember that God is not going to give me anything that I can't handle, and anything that I can't handle, He'll handle for me, then I'm doing all right.
In Washington, Susanna Pinto, EWTN News Nightly.
As many Americans still struggle to find work, the recent writings of Pope Francis have taken center stage in America's ongoing debate over how to fix the economy. President Obama quoted the Pope approvingly last week in a speech denouncing the income gap between rich and poor. Radio host Rush Limbaugh, meanwhile, blasted the Pope's writings as pure Marxism. Joining me now to talk about Pope Francis, the economy, and Catholic social teaching are John Carr, director of Georgetown University's Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life, and former director of the Department of Justice, Peace, and Human Development for the U.S. Bishops, and Ramesh Ponnuru, senior editor for National Review Online and a visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Great to have you. And John, I'll start with you. So there's been a lot of uproar over this apostolic exhortation, the joy of the gospel, and I think the thing that's gotten the most attention are the Pope's words on economics. What's new about this? Because some of this sounds pretty consistent with what we've heard from other popes.
Well, absolutely. The first thing, everybody got to read the whole thing. It takes a while, but it's a wonderful Advent gift. I mean, it challenges us in so many ways. The substance is not new. The language, maybe the passion, is new. It sounds like someone who's been working in the slums of Buenos Aires instead of someone who grew up in Germany or Poland. Just as Pope John Paul II brought his experience for living under communism, I think Pope Francis has brought his passion for the poor and frankly his closeness to the poor. The numbers are better, but so many people are without the dignity of work or a decent place to live. And he says, when the stock market hits a record, it's big news. When people die of homelessness, it's not news at all. And he says that's a tragedy. Frankly, that's an indictment.
Now, what do you say to those who say, look, this is a pope, he's trained as a pastor and a theologian, he doesn't know anything about economics, and he should sort of stay away from this topic because it's one where he doesn't have any particular expertise?
Well, I don't want to pick a fight with Rush Limbaugh. He's got more than I've got. But he doesn't know much about Marx or the Pope or Jesus if he thinks the Pope is a Marxist. This is a man who years ago stood up to the Marxist dimensions of some liberation theology. So he's in good standing to challenge the excesses of capitalism. If we listen carefully, what he's saying is, let's look at all of life, especially the economy, from the bottom up, how it touched the least of these. That's as old as the prophets. It's as clear as Matthew 25, and that was the message of John Paul II and Benedict XVI expressed in different ways.
And Ramesh, a lot of conservatives have, as we mentioned, criticized Pope Francis's words. You yourself have said that you wish he had used more precision in some ways. Tell us about that.
Well, I do think, first of all, I agree that it's important to read the whole document. It's a very wide-ranging document that covers a lot of topics and not just the economic questions. I think that we have grown accustomed under the previous two popes to a style of discussion that was a kind of the style of a scholar intellectual. And even before them, we had a lot of diplomat popes. And so there's different ways of using the language that we're accustomed to. This is a much more kind of pastoral document. It reflects his experience in Argentina, particularly being a pastor to the poor in Argentina. And so I think we shouldn't read these things looking for a kind of detailed program of political economy. And in fact, the Pope says as much in the exhortation. But what he is also telling us, which I think, whatever we think about economic policy questions, is that we cannot just give lip service to the idea that all of us, whether we're a businessman, an individual citizen deciding how to vote, a policymaker, need to make the relief of poverty one of our main goals.
Now, it's interesting in reading the exhortation in full, which, as you said, John, not everyone has, but also then reading a lot of the commentary, you have seen some who've criticized Pope Francis and what he said from a more libertarian economic point of view. But then I've also seen some writers who seem very eager to downplay what he says, to sort of make it like, just sort of a side note in the midst of this very long exhortation, or this is nothing new. I think you could argue, obviously, it's consistent with Catholic social teaching, but it is pretty pointed. I mean, again and again, he comes back saying, if you think, you can be one of the people who doesn't worry about the economy as it affects the poor, or if you think this is a problem for someone else, this is for every Christian, every Catholic to take this seriously. Is there a danger of conservatives becoming sort of cafeteria Catholics in the other direction? We often hear cafeteria Catholics are the ones who don't want to listen to the church on abortion or sexual morality. Do we see some of that same thing with economic conservatives who don't want to listen to the church when it comes to worrying about the poor?
Well, there is a danger of that, absolutely. If a conservative Catholic denies the importance of taking care of the poor and sort of advocates an every man for himself kind of philosophy, then that person is defying church teaching. On the other hand, you can, I think, in good conscience, disagree with certain things that the Pope has said. In various places, for example, he's talked about globalization eviscerating the poor, and we don't want that kind of globalization. I think you can look at the evidence and reasonably come to the conclusion that, in fact, trade has been a great force in lifting the poor out of poverty. And so he's got the right goal, but he might be wrong on that particular question.
And John, what would you say to that, especially to those who say, look, the free market has been a great mitigator of poverty around the world. We're a very prosperous society, in part because our market is as free as it is. So what do you say to those who say, well, the Pope doesn't quite have it right on some of these issues?
I'd first say take a breath and read the whole thing. They sound a little bit, and others have pointed this out, like the older brother in the story of the prodigal son, saying, we've been here, we've been with you, why are you reaching out to all these other people? He's challenging everybody. When I was growing up, the question was, do we agree with the Pope instead of does the Pope agree with us? I think we ought to resist the temptation on the right, whether it's economics, on the left, whether it's abortion and marriage, of trying to twist the Holy Father into our own agenda. In fact, he challenges all of us. And thank God he's taking another way of talking. I don't recall, a lot of talk show conversations about apostolic exhortations, and somehow he made it to be the man of the year. I think this is a great moment for the church. We can have a terrific discussion of how best to lift up the poor. But the silence in this country on that question has been a moral scandal, and hopefully it's coming to an end.
Ramesh, we're almost out of time, but do you see fiscal conservatives, Catholic fiscal conservatives, taking a second look at some of their own, the policies they've been advocating, or a second look at the issue of poverty? I mean, do you think this could have that kind of effect, or is it just sort of a document that'll be forgotten in a week or two?
Well, I think that there are currents within conservatism that have always been interested in those questions, and how do we use free markets and limited government to lift up the poor. We've seen Paul Ryan starting to try to develop an anti-poverty agenda that's distinctive to the right. We've seen Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, talking about how we have to be communitarian, not just individualistic as conservatives. And I think that this document, this call to pay attention to the excluded, as the Pope puts it, is going to give more force to those efforts.
Interesting. Ramesh Ponnuru, John Carr, thank you both for joining me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have to run to a break right now, but when we come back, we'll bring you the latest on the Pope's new commission to combat sexual abuse of children. Stay with us. Welcome back to EWTN News Nightly. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell. We go now to Rome, where our correspondent Alan Holdren brings us the latest from the Vatican. Alan, I think I see behind you that the Christmas tree is up in St. Peter's Square. How is Pope Francis preparing for Christmas?
That's right, the Christmas tree is up here behind me. They've been putting on the lights all afternoon. They just haven't turned them on yet. Pope Francis is preparing for the Christmas season with Friday Advent meditations inside the Apostolic Palace in a chapel. He's joined by Vatican department heads as they prepare for Christmas all together. He's also got a special eye for the nativity scenes that are going up, one just at the base of the tree there, and another one inside St. Peter's Basilica. And we know that he's asked for a special simplicity to be given to those nativity scenes this year. And also, we know the Pope's schedule for Christmas. He's going to be preparing his homily, surely, for the midnight Mass celebration on the 24th, and on the 25th, Christmas Day, he'll be back on the central balcony of St. Peter's Basilica for the traditional blessing of the city and the world.
Good to know. And Alan, when we checked in with you last week, Pope Francis was in the midst of meeting with the 8 cardinals who advised him on church reform. One of those cardinals, Sean O'Malley of Boston, recently announced the first major initiative to come out of those meetings, the creation of a new Vatican commission to combat the sexual abuse of children. What can you tell us about the commission?
Well, this commission shows first and foremost the Pope's willingness to address the delicate and difficult issues head on. This commission will be helping bishops from around the world to create and implement child protection measures in their diocese. Also, how to choose and train priests and respond to sexual abuses that have taken place. Now, Cardinal O'Malley told us that what this commission doesn't aim to be is a replacement for those dioceses and for those bishops who are ultimately responsible for the Church's response.
The Holy See will try and be helpful and help to identify best practices, but certainly we hope that the Holy See will be able to model what those best practices are as a way of helping other dioceses and bishops' conferences to have a response that is truly adequate and pastoral.
So, Colleen, what we expect in the next couple of weeks is that that Pope Francis will issue a document to officially establish this commission and also announce the people who will be sitting on it.
All right, thank you, Alan. Joining me now from Johns Hopkins University to talk about the Pope's new anti-abuse commission is Dr. Paul McHugh. Dr. McHugh is a psychiatrist and one of the original members of the National Review Board for the Protection of Children and Young People. That board was established by the U.S. bishops 11 years ago to address the clerical abuse crisis. Welcome, Dr. McHugh.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Colleen.
Doctor, let's start with this commission. What's the significance of the Vatican establishing this commission?
Well, I think it's a marvelous move forward in relationship to the Church and the Vatican looking closely at what we resolved and developed here in America and what they could see as the next step.
And what do you think needs to be done by this commission?
Well, I think that the commission should study what we've accomplished over here, and I think they will discover that the Catholic bishops and the National Review Board did very, very well. I do think there's more to do, but I think the universal church has to see what the next step should be and how that would apply both to America and to the world.
And you mentioned there's more to do. What sort of steps do you have in mind, both in the United States and then more broadly in the church? What more needs to be done to protect children?
Yes. Well, I think that the issue of protecting the children has been very much achieved here in the United States. Remember that the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops, really under the leadership of Archbishop Gregory, decided that they would reveal to the world just exactly how severe the problem of child abuse was in America, and that they would put into place ways of protecting children. And the National Review Board, with various leaders on it, achieved both of those important victories.
You know, there still are, though, cases coming out. There have still been issues with reporting of various abuse incidents. What do you say to those critics who say the only way this commission is really going to be meaningful in the lives of Catholics is if the Vatican begins cracking down on bishops who shuffle abusers from parish to parish, as opposed to simply reporting them to the authorities and letting the chips fall where they may?
Well, as I say, I don't think that there are anywhere near as many crimes being committed now as there were in the past. In fact, most of the individuals that you discover being revealed now were individuals who committed their crimes in the middle of the crisis back in the 70s and early 80s. And what I think that the people are, naturally enough, everybody feels quite betrayed by the church, and the anger is still felt there about it. And that's why I think the church has to do take one more step in relationship to what happened involved with this. I believe that as Catholics, we have met two of the three issues of penance. We've acknowledged the sin, we've made a clear resolve to correct it, but the thing that's missing now, and I think which the Vatican could well put into place, we need to do a penitential. We need penance now, the third thing of the sacrament.
Sorry to interrupt you again. We only have a couple minutes, and I want to make sure and ask you all my questions. Pope Francis has mentioned a lot of times the culture of clericalism in the church and denounced this. And a lot of those looking at the abuse situation see this as one very horrible symptom of this culture of clericalism. In other words, priests or bishops covering for each other rather than sort of bringing these events to light. And you know, obviously a lot of these cases are, as you said, older, but that is a continuing concern that we hear, is this culture of clericalism, and it's a concern of the popes. Do you think this new Vatican Commission is going to be able to do anything to combat that?
I believe if they move forward, they will combat it very successfully. And our report, of course, did speak about clericalism, but you remember, and you should remember, that any organization that is organized has a way of protecting themselves. I belong to a great organization of psychiatrists. Let me assure you that when something goes wrong among psychiatrists, there's a protection of each other. There's a rolling of the wagons together. Clericalism is just a description of how a profession can sometimes be overprotective of one another. And I do believe that the bishops and the National Council of Catholic Bishops in America have confronted that and have made it clear that they have done more than any other organization in America to reveal what has been a serious crime within its midst. If other people would do that, and if, as well, the Catholic Church would enter a period of real acknowledgement of this matter, as a problem within and perhaps do penance once a year for some 10 or 15 years. I think this complaint that clericalism or protectionism or other kinds of professional neglect of the problem for personal reasons would disappear.
Dr. Paul McHugh, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be watching this commission in the months to come.
Thank you.
Finally tonight, we close with a look at one Catholic parish responding to the Pope's call to serve others. Despite belonging to one of the poorest and smallest parishes in the Washington, D.C. area, members of Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary are sharing their time and money with the less fortunate. EWTN News Nightly's Wyatt Goolsby has the story.
165, 66. I'll take your card. Okay, thank you.
This season is the busiest time of the year at Assumption Church in Southeast D.C. The Thanksgiving and Christmas seasons are key periods for the church's outreach program, which provides food baskets for those unable to pay for meals. Assumption's pastor, Father Mark Ivany, says the program is supported by Catholic organizations that donate food to their pantry.
It really is a parish event, and the outreach program has been part of our parish for since the 1960s.
Assumption has only 250 members. The parish doesn't have a school or any other means of making money. Yet every year, volunteers have enough in the pantry to provide for thousands.
Well, they're always very honest with me, and so when I ask Father, and I ask them how they're going, they say, "Father, I'm tired," or "We're swamped." But when it's all said and done, we share war stories and talk about how blessed we are that God has entrusted this ministry to us.
One of those volunteers is Larry Hill, who fell on hard times himself after he lost his job 7 years ago, and he received food from the same program. Having a support group encouraging him to volunteer helped Hill to get back on track.
Well, I feel as though if they help me, the only way I could really give back is to volunteer and help other people that's in need.
Father Mark says Hill's experience is an important lesson.
And one of the things that we sometimes see is we get more involved in the outreach aspect, and we sometimes forget the opportunity to evangelize. Pope Francis is very much calling us to do both and, to evangelize and to serve the social needs of the community.
To entice them over.
Jacqueline Turner agrees. Thanks to Assumption's outreach, she can serve a holiday meal to her daughter and grandchildren.
Very thankful, and not only that, the lady prayed with me. And I needed that too, because I haven't been feeling well, and all that was good. You get food, you get fellowship. What else can you ask for?
In Washington, Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
That's all for tonight. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And you can catch our entire program again on EWTN's YouTube page. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell, and on behalf of all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.